I'm dying to ask how the older generation reacts when you put a VR headset on their heads because they can't even handle a cell phone when you put it in their hands, right? And all of a sudden you put this alien contraption on their heads. What's their reaction to the VR headset by itself?
We've done around three families. Just may say, I think there were 7 or 8 partition witnesses that we've actually tried it on. The reaction is it's a bit fiddly to get going, of course, with tech issues to make sure that they've got the holding the remote control and they know what to press. So we try to make the interface and like prepare it before it goes on their heads, and we try to make sure they have headphones can go आवाज भी सही आए. um the response is absolutely joyous because they haven't seen anything like that. I think anybody, if you put it on a headset for the first time and you've never tried it before, and if it's like, so we use the Oculus, it is a different experience, like just the environments that are already there, even if you're just in the kind of the reception room of it. So it is absolutely amazing. We've had very like they're surprised, they're actually like feel like they're there, they're like standing on whether it's a mountain or the chat of their house or something. It's been a very joyous reaction.
All views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not meant to offend or hurt the sentiments of, including, but not limited to, any person, dead or alive, religion or ethnic group, community or country. The primary purpose of this podcast is to build a cultural bridge and shed light on the similarities that we share with our friends from across the border. So, welcome, Saadia. Welcome, Jayosmita. Really glad that you could join us today on our next episode of 883 to Infinity. We're really glad that you can tell us about your experiences working with post partition veterans. And thank you for joining us on this episode.
Thanks for having us.
So, Saadia, let's start with you. I understand currently you're pursuing your PhD at Warwick, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What got you to pursue your PhD? What are you doing in Warwick?
So what I'm doing at Warwick is something different from Project Dastaan. So I used to be a journalist and political cartoonist. I still am a cartoonist. So I'm doing my PhD in international relations and basically on visuals of conflict in Pakistan and how they project a certain image of what nationalism and foreign policy is. So that's my PhD research. So I mean, it's linked to my interest because it's about visual storytelling, which is something Project Dastan is also doing. So Project Dastan is kind of like our little passion project for me and Jayosmita, where we're trying to reconnect partition witnesses to their ancestral homes using virtual reality. So we're both interested in it as storytellers, as writers, about what are the new ways that we can bring to the to kind of amplify the discussion about partition and our shared heritage between India and Pakistan. Yeah.
So I'm sure people must be very intrigued when you say that the role that media plays in terms of depicting nationalism in Pakistan, and especially since your lens, because you mentioned that of course you're a journalist and you're a cartoonist as well. Do you have an example, like your favorite example, that you'd like to give people for them to better understand what you mean by this?
Um, I mean, there's so I basically work in looking at political cartoons, which I feel is something that people instantly connect with. And we've seen many scandals internationally as well, where a cartoon has been published and then it's like turned into a security situation, and it's become an international incident, and then there's been protests in other countries, etc. So I think the visual itself kind of transcends language and um, gives people something to kind of latch on to understand each other, or to kind of like apply their own interpretation to the image, right? So if for example, if you look at the Danish cartoon controversy, um, there was some other logic in which it was published in that country, and then it was kind of interpreted across the world by other societies, communities, whether it's Muslim, non-Muslim, etc., in a different way. And then that turned into an international scenario. So I think like images are something like once we put them out, once we publish them, they kind of have a life of their own because of the way other people and other communities can interpret them. And in this global environment, I mean, if you look at memes, if you look at social media, that's the way, like once it's out there, it's out there. So as an example, I think the Danish one is one example of cartoons that were published that kind of hurt Muslim sentiments, and it it created this debate globally about what constitutes hate speech, what constitutes free speech, what does it mean to hurt communities' feeling. Do we need to formulate blasphemy laws in Europe, etc.? So I think that's one big example of images. But in our local context, I don't know if you've noticed, Kate, there's a lot of scapegoating when it comes to India and Pakistan. You know, you might have seen in the Indian media,
Of
there will
course.
be cartoons and images that are kind of blaming a certain problem on Pakistan.
Finger pointing.
Yeah, and in the same images you'll see in Pakistan as well. And I think
Right.
there's a very complex history. It's not just que problem is in Pakistan, so we're blaming it on India.
Hmm.
It's a very complex scenario in which a cartoonist or a writer is kind of pressured to come up with these images to fit into this idea of what a Pakistan identity is, what nationalism is, to be patriotic, the pressure to be patriotic and appear patriotic as it's like the state defines it. So I think images in that not just play into like, you know, what we think of the other, but also how we're kind of pressured into accepting the stereotype of the other, the stereotype of the Indian who's always, you know, hating Muslims, or the stereotype of
Hmm.
the Pakistani who'll always be depicted as a terrorist or a man in a weird turban hat with his guns, etc. So
Hmm.
it's not just that people believe that, it's also that people are pressured into believing कि this is how the other is, this is how India is or Pakistan
Hmm.
is.
The pressure to be patriotic. I like that. I like the ring of that. We'll come back more to that.
So Usman, I'm curious. Like, let's take it from the other point of view. So Jayosmita, like, so there's a certain identity that seems to be locked into being a Pakistani or being an Indian, and then we have a certain notion of what the other's identity is like. Given that, maybe there's an overarching vision in your project, but at what point did you come into the picture, and did you did you perhaps have a different view on the stereotype, the that you decided to go into this sort of initiative?
So the thing is, stereotype is there, like you literally grow into it. You have your media, you have all kinds of movies that you watch, especially right now. There's like Razi coming in, Uri coming in, all these movies are coming in, and they're like, ha, Pakistani hai, so they'll be wearing that turban, they'll have an AK-47. That's a typical Pakistani. Okay, so that stereotype is obviously something that I've been fed in. That being said, it's also like when you're on Instagram, when you're on like Facebook, you have like so much of social media stuff, and you're watching like movies. Then again, even Zindagi TV had come. So that was like, I think Zindagi TV did one of the major changes of having the stereotypes, because it was basically like not like Hindi serials, but basically the Indian setup only. It's more or less the Indian
I
setup
have.
Yeah.
only.
Yeah.
You'll have to expand on Zindagi TV. I'm not exactly sure
Zindagi,
what they've
oh my
done.
god,
Is
Zindagi TV is
it good or
amazing.
bad or what?
So
Z
okay,
Zindagi.
Zee
Z
Zindagi,
In
yeah.
fact,
Zindagi.
we spoke about this with Junaid on our episode with him as well about Pakistani television, Pakistani cinema on Indian television as well. It's a Z.
Yes,
It's a Z channel,
it's yeah, it's a Z channel, and we used to have all kinds of Fawad Khan shows.
and he's a heartthrob
Oh,
in India.
I think
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of
he
the
he's a
trails
heartthrob
on
everywhere, man. Come on.
channel,
Sorry, Sadia, say that again.
wasn't the show Trails on the same channel, I think.
It
um
was, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
All right.
So
Oh,
like Fawad Khan came into the picture, and then obviously I think his first film was Khoobsurat, first Indian film was Khoobsurat, and it was basically he looks like an Indian. The entire show is like Indian setup. The same Saas Bahu stuff goes on. Maybe not with the Dhoomtana Nanas, but that's there, right? So that initially broke a certain sense of ideas, what a Pakistani is like or what an Indian is supposed to be like. That being said, Instagram did wonders. I started following Project Dastan. I started following all these history pages because like interest in history and everything. And I don't think there was any inhibitions while joining Project Dastan, because I was just fangirling over the project. I'm like, I want to be a part of this project. This project is like amazing. That is exactly how I joined. And I spammed Sam. I'm like, I really want to be a part of this project. This is amazing. Can I please be a part of this project? So yeah.
But you didn't face much resistance from those around you that you were going against the norm, at least what the old norm
So,
was.
well, the thing is, of course, families will be like, "हाँ ठीक है, be careful." Okay, but I don't think there was a lot of resistance because more or less, like, I am still in the academic sphere. Like, I'm still pursuing my master's. I still haven't gone out, and especially like being a student of English literature and cultural studies. That way, most of my friends are also of the same background, like that niche. कि अच्छा ठीक है, ये लोग ऐसे नहीं हैं. That is a complete misconception, and media narratives are different. So, so friends and like family was not that resistant, to be honest. What resistance is perhaps maximum social media पे थोड़ा बहुत होता है, but that's bare minimum.
So it's interesting,
Sure.
on the subject of resistance, I want to come back to
Hmm.
something that Sadia said earlier, and I'm going to put three variables on the table, right? One is you guys are both journalists or media professionals.
Hmm.
Jayosmita, I know you're a filmmaker. Sadia, you spoke about, your journalism and cartooning days as well. That's number one. Number two, you guys are both invested in Project Dastaan, which means that you have a certain amount of exposure or you have a certain amount of visibility to obviously the stories which you're going to be talking about, later on this podcast as well. And number three is I feel like there's a certain amount of international exposure as well, right? Sadia, you've been in the UK for a while, of course, pursuing your education. We spoke about the role that the media plays in terms of antagonizing people on the other side of the border because they're fitting these perpetual stereotypes, right? Sadia, you said that, there's a certain amount of expectation from the media in terms of how they position themselves and how they represent and what they write and, the cartoons as well. Jayasmita, you spoke also about the stereotypical nature of representation when it comes to portraying certain aspects. Sadia, you gave an example earlier as well in terms of things that may not necessarily, but sometimes rub a certain community the wrong way, certain, hurt certain religious sentiments, etc. Now that you've had international exposure and you've lived outside of India as well, do you feel that this sensitivity exists outside of South Asia as well? Or do you think this is something that exists only in our ecosystem because of the years of pent up, hatred that we've built for certain ideas and stories? And is it a South Asian sentiment or is it something that you do see in different parts of the world as well now that you've been abroad for some time?
I feel that it's very easy to essentialize the fact that Indian and Pakistanis are always, at each other's throats, and there's a political issue. And I mean, I feel knowing our history, 70 years, 4 wars fought, I feel a lot of what we see on social media and the hate and the stereotyping, it's bad, but it's also not something we haven't seen before. This happens in other communities as well. I mean, uh, if any other country had this type of history of a colonization and then a country breaking up and a separatist movement happening, you would see the same type of politics. I mean, if you look at the case of Brexit here right now and the rhetoric that's going on against immigration and the hate speech that's going on, the way that some people are talking about Black Lives Matter here, which is absolutely offensive to my ears. These things happen, this political conflict, the othering, the stereotyping is not just an India Pakistan thing. It's not something that's innate to us. This is part of the way communities interact, right? Our problem is that over time we've not really been able to resolve a lot of our issues. There are some conflicts that are ongoing. So yeah, this is not something that I would say is innate to us or it's part of our nature. Communalism is not part of our nature. It is just a word that we've become kind of started using to kind of label the conflicts that's been going on. If you remove some of the issues that we have with each other, if we can actually sit down on a table, talk to each other, I mean, if actually Indians and Pakistanis can freely visit each other, a lot of these things are slowly going to kind of become an artifact of history. कि ये होता था और अब नहीं हो रहा. So I think that nothing is permanent. The situations can resolve. They seem really terrible at certain times in our histories, but this is how people interact. For example, in India there is a lot of resistance to the idea of Pakistan. This is a country that should not have been created. And I feel, well, it happened, it was created. Separatist movements happened everywhere. New states were forming at the time anyway. These are facts of history. We kind of now need to accept and now move on. Okay, this happened. Now what do we do? Do we continue to bar people from visiting each
Right.
other and continue to stop people from, हमारा जो project है, it's about how can we allow people to visit ancestral homes? Like, imagine
Correct.
yourself right now as whatever you are in your 20s or 30s, not being able to go home. This is
I like
simple
that you said
idea.
20s.
Well, Jay was in her 20s. The simple idea that you can't go home, that in itself is traumatic. Uske upar aap 70 years of history and layering and hate and the trauma that people went through, uske upar wo sab kuch layer karo. So the positions that we are right now are very understandable, or it's our job to kind of understand them and now kind of help resolve them,
Oh, absolutely.
especially
You're so
within
right, because in
Lahore.
2006, when I visited Lahore, obviously there was a certain amount of nervousness in my family because you're crossing the border and obviously you're going to Pakistan, quote unquote, right? So there's a certain amount of nervousness. But I feel with the generation not immediately above me, which is my parents, but the generation above them, there was just innate amounts of excitement, right? Because all of them have been born in Sindh, right? This is my grandmother. My grandfather is no longer with us, but all his brothers that I spoke to, and you won't believe, they drew out little diagrams saying you go to this street and this is where my house was,
Whoa.
and you'll see this little clock tower over here, and our father had donated money to build this clock tower. Umair, I spoke to you about that, if you remember.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah,
if you
yeah.
go down the street, you'll see a lamp post over here, and I used to meet my school girlfriend under this lamp post, and please take pictures for me. So there's this innate sense of excitement that they had, and it's unfortunate that even in their 80s and 90s, it may be their last wish to visit their hometown where they were born, to kind of relive these memories, but they don't really get the opportunity. I mean, it's not even an option, right? Forget the means to do it. It's not even an option for them to consider. But I definitely do resonate with the same emotions, because I see them in my family, right, as close to my family as well.
No,
Jasmita.
but yeah, the way sorry to interject, the way these guys are doing it, Sadi, and I think it'd be interesting at this point to inform everybody who's listening what actually is the nuts and bolts of Project Dastan. How does it work? Because as I can see it from the outside, feels like, for example, if someone does want to relive that space, these guys can actually make it happen through AR and VR. So how does it work? The geek in me is very, very excited to see how this thing actually works out.
So what we're doing is we kind of find people who kind of want to reconnect with their ancestral homes, villages, towns, cities, jo bhi. We interview them. Jayosmita also, for example, is part of a partition family, so her grandfather's been interviewed. So we interview partition survivors who are still with us today. We ask them their stories, and our purpose is kind of not to re-engage in the traumatic aspects of migration, but the nicer aspects, in the sense ke, what was your childhood like, where did you grow up, what was your school like, what was general life like in the place that you lived in, and we try to engage in those memories, because we feel that time, or that shared, that's part of our shared history, that where you may live today in Pakistan, maybe somebody who's now in India, their family's in India, they don't share your religion or your political beliefs, but they used to live in your house, just that idea of that shared space. We then have a team in India and Pakistan who goes out on the field and tries to find these places. So we do a lot of tracking. So Jayosmita has been very instrumental in like finding out Google Maps pe ki exactly the thing that they told us about in the interview, where is that,
Whoa,
and setting out the itinerary for our
Oh, that's
field work.
awesome.
And
that
then
is kick ass.
we go with our we have our 360 cameras. We go in with the GoPro, and we kind of take a 360 of the places they've told us. And then the last point of this journey is kind of to kind of knit that together in VR film, jo people can see on VR headsets. So we go back to the person we interviewed with a VR headset and kind of give them that immersive experience of standing in the town, ya koi field hai, ya masjid, whatever they've remembered, and
Nice.
kind of like closing the loop. Ke, you've never been able to go back home. Here is what your home is to. So if you could go back to India or Pakistan so this is what you would see of your old village or town or house, etc. And this is kind of like the first part of Project Dastan, the social impact, where we're reconnecting people. अगर कोई मिलता है उनको, somebody who remembers them from the past, who's, generational families, phone पे भी बात करा देते हैं. So we do that, and we're kind of using the conversation that happens, the way families are reconnecting with their ancestries, to kind of create this conversation online about, how can the youth now re-engage with partition histories in a new way. So rather than an archive that's stuck in a university or on a website, jo textual hoti, jo mushkil to get into it, we kind of have this very immersive archive, and it's kind of right there, so you don't need to go very far to kind of understand these stories. So we have, along with the social impact, a full VR immersive film as well that's going to be animated. It's called Trial of Empire, where you can take a partition journey, and you're kind of in the feet of a child who's trying to migrate during 1947. And our third project right now is a 2D animated series of films. So it's a cross-country collaboration between Puffball Studios in Pakistan and a studio called Spitting Image in India. So we're making a series of partition shorts about stories you may not have heard before. So away from the Punjab-centric Punjab narrative of partition, we're making three fictionalized stories, about one about bureaucracy and statelessness, one about the Bay of Bengal community and how partition impacted those three seafaring communities, okay, normally people have not heard about, especially in Pakistan. And thirdly, about the experience of women in partition, and what women specifically, what a female experience of partition was. So that's like, I'll stop talking now. I've talked enough about the project, but that's like a three main prongs of the project to kind of reconnect a younger generation with partition histories.
That's so
So
cool.
where does this flagship the VR immersive animated movie that you're talking about, when does it actually drop? Like when's the project timeline? And can anybody and everybody like see it? Can I put it on my VR headset and check it out?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the point, that you can. So it's in production right now. So we're hoping sometime by the end of the year we can finish it off and kind of release it. So obviously, like if you follow us, you'll be able to see it. And if you have the VR headsets, yes, of course. And we're trying to kind of have, once it's ready, to have kind of a VR tour going on by the schools and universities in India and Pakistan, museums here in the UK, where you can actually, like, if you don't have the headset, we can kind of like help you share that experience with you. And if you don't have a headset, then we have our other projects, our 2D versions that obviously people can engage in. So we're trying as much digital engagement with people as possible.
One of the things that I find most fulfilling about us doing this podcast is that we talk to so many interesting people and we get to hear so many interesting stories every single week, and that really fills our heart with joy. I'm guessing as part of the first part of what you guys do, the social impact part, especially because you're also talking to people who are probably in their 80s, maybe their 90s, some centennials as well, people in their hundreds as well, who've seen partition firsthand through their eyes, and therefore they have these memories, and therefore you recreate them for them in today's day and age. And I'm sure there must be some joyous stories that emerge from literally the cracks of, and the boonies of or conversations that you have with people. Jayosmita, why don't you tell us some of the most touching and heartwarming stories that you've heard when you've spoken to people and interacted with people, and actually brought these stories to life for them to relive in this VR format?
This was one of the interviews which I hadn't taken. She had, I think. You had taken Saida's interview, right? Like, that's my favorite interview. So the thing is, she moved from Lucknow to Karachi, and like she spoke about how her life was in Lucknow, how she loved Lucknow, everything, okay, and how she used to go on dates on the boat in Gomti River and all of that, okay. And then after the partition, the boyfriend also came to Karachi, and then they got married, and then like that bit could be short, and of course she passed away like a few days back. I think a month or so back,
Yeah,
right?
recently.
Yeah, she passed away, so we couldn't show her that. But that entire there's this highlight on the Project Dastaan page called Lucknow, and that I feel is the most heartwarming thing I've ever seen, because there's also this one bit where Sparsh and Sam go and find this person who was her neighbor, and they talk about our papas kyun nahi aate and all of that. It's there in the
Oh
page
wow.
and everything. It's just super heartwarming. Then this another interview which I had taken was of one of my grandfather's brothers, and he is 91, and all he does is sits all day long in front of YouTube and checks out Dhaka University and everything in Dhaka.
Oh, wow.
And then
Oh.
I was interviewing him. He's like, no, no, I'll show you where this is. So this is Dhaka University. This is where you go. This is how you do it. And I was like, wow, that is awesome.
How sweet. I know
No,
I
so
have
it's interesting.
same experience with my
It's
grandmom.
yeah, but I'm just wondering, Jasmita, since you're there on the field, on the ground as well. So, for example, if I go to an old neighborhood that I haven't been to in like a decade, I do get a sense of joy when I'm there. Oh, we used to go around here. We used to play here. यहाँ पे झूला होता था, यहाँ पे ये होता था. But there's this also uneasy feeling when there's change in that neighborhood. There used to be this dry cleaner shop there. Oh, वो बंद हो गया. I wonder where the guy went. So इस किस्म की, so when you're on the ground, you're trying to map these places out. Like, what do you think is the reaction of those people that might have a different picture of that place in their mind, but then now it's some of the things are there but some of the things are different. So how do you guys manage those expectations?
So the thing is, I haven't physically been on the tracking bit, but what my experience has been, one is interviewing, and the other bit is staying on WhatsApp when the tracking is going on. So this um, one of the participants was Hari Krishan ji, and he was supremely enthu, and I think that's what got us started with the Zoom interviews. Okay, he was so enthusiastic. It was his birthday on the 4th of December. He's like, I want to see my village, and that's my wish. Okay, that's my birthday wish. And we
Wow.
interviewed him, and Aisha was on the field. Aisha was tracking in Pakistan, and what happened was he kept on like on the WhatsApp group, he was also there, and he's like, maybe you can call someone else. And he then sent us, like, we couldn't find his school or I think his house, one of the two, either his school or house. And he sent us 5 articles from the Dawn and asked us to contact the journalist, okay,
Oh, wow.
who had
Wow.
covered those stories of his village. And then surprisingly, we also found his contact because one of our team members was friends with him. So
Nice.
Hassan was friends with him. And but that being said, of course, there are a lot of places which cannot be covered, and they're like
Of
not
course.
there anymore
Of
because
course.
urbanization.
Yeah, that's
And
sad.
that becomes a little sad. But regardless, the fact that it's being tried on is, I think even the older generation appreciates the effort.
Of course. Of
I
course.
hope.
I'm dying to ask how the older generation reacts when you put a VR headset on their heads, because they can't even handle a cell phone when you put it in their hands, right? And all of a sudden you put this alien contraption on their heads. What's their reaction to the VR headset by itself?
So we've done around 3 families. Just may say, I think there were 7 or 8 partition witnesses that we've actually tried it on. The reaction is it's a bit fiddly to get going, of course, with tech issues, to make sure that they've got the holding the remote control and they know what to press. So we try to make the interface and like prepare it before it goes on their heads, and we try to make sure they have headphones, can go awaaz bhi sahi aaye. um the response is absolutely joyous because they haven't seen anything like that. I think anybody, if you put it on a headset for the first time and you've never tried it before, and if it's like, so we use the Oculus, it is a different experience, like just the environments that are already there, even if you're just in the kind of the reception room of it. So it is absolutely amazing. We've had very, like, they're surprised, they're actually like feel like they're there, there's like standing on whether it's a mountain or the chat of their house or something. It's been a very joyous reaction. We make our films, make sure when we're filming nothing is too shaky, so that उनको उस तरह का nausea या कुछ experience ना हो. And we make sure that the clips are small. So our longest take back has been, I think, around 8 minutes and no more, because I think that's enough for them. And they can view it again if they want to. And we make sure कि family ho वहाँ, so in case a bad reaction happens or if they need any support, they have their support system. We always do these experiences with the family around. And we also make sure कि उनका हाथ पकड़ाओ किसी ने, because when you're standing in that, you kind of like
You get
want to kind of
disoriented.
go around, touch things and see what's happening. So we make sure that somebody's holding their hand, so that when they're turning to girena, etc. So it's difficult, it's not impossible. And I think the responses that we get, the absolute joy and nostalgia that kind of they get immersed in, I think it's utterly worth the whole effort. And just
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
yeah,
Must be
it's this
beautiful.
very emotional experience. Family emotional हो जाती है, वो खुद भी emotional होते हैं. So it's a very special thing when we can actually do that, and that happens.
For this generation, because they are not on Instagram, like Jayosmita said when she found Project Dastaan on Instagram, they're not on Instagram and social media. How do they find you, right? How do they get to know about this initiative? How do they find you? How do they apply to be a part of your program? I'm not sure if I'm getting the terminology right, but how do they participate in an experience like this?
So we generally, people have been like, it's their children or the grandchildren who are getting in touch with them. They, oh, my grandfather would really love this, etc. So it's generally the younger generation that has been contacting us, and then reaching out to us. And then we also have our own issues of resource concerns. When can we travel, etc. तो हम उस हिसाब से then we do the interviews, seeing whether can we actually get them back. So ऐसे भी हुआ है कि we've done some interviews in 2018, लेकिन अब जाके we've been able to do the field work for those stories. So it is sometimes a longer process. So it's generally social media outreach, and you can just tell us your story online, and we'll try to set up an interview if we can physically do it. If not, then now we started doing them on Zoom. But we also try to, on the way of our stories, and when we're in the field, when we're talking to people, to find more people. Because we feel that a lot of the people that are reaching out to us are obviously people who are of a certain socioeconomic class, and they have access to these things. So can we actually reach people who want to have the same experience but maybe don't have access? So we also try to do, when we're on the field, some type of outreach, talk to people who may not have this type of social media exposure, who family may not be kind of plugged in. तो उनकी भी हम सुन लें और उनकी भी interviews ले लें, and see if those people want to also join in our experience. What we do is absolutely free. We don't charge anything to the partition witness. We feel that this, them telling their story to us and sharing it is enough. This generation has done enough for us, and it's kind of like also a way to give back to this generation. And if any way we can give them some form of closure about the home they've never visited in 70 years, so we kind of do this as a free service. So as soon as we can, like, if anybody wants to get in touch with us, we'll try to kind of hear your story and find your home.
That's lovely. Has anyone ever tried to or asked you guys to probably make some kind of connection or some outreach? Let's say I have an ancestral home in which Umair's family lives. Has anyone said, "Hey, put me in touch with them. Let me see who they are"?
Do we have any examples like that, Jayo? Like, because generally we do put people in touch on WhatsApp and share their numbers, and if they want to talk again, they can. So we
What was
have
Iqbaluddin?
Iqbaluddin,
Iqbaluddin
yeah,
arranges it.
Iqbaluddin stories is also similar because so Iqbaluddin migrated from India to Pakistan, and he showed us a picture of his friend. And I think that picture was very soon after 1950s. Ki picture thi, and his friend is a Sikh friend is standing outside a local mosque, and he was like, "If you can you find him and find out what happened to him? उनके बड़े भाई का दोस्त थे वो." So we searched a lot. We couldn't find the mosque. Sparsh and Sam were in the field. They tried to find the mosque, and they really had to do a lot of like art history on the go to kind of recognize the mosque and ask people around कि ये facade होता था ये कहाँ गया वो apparently वो monsoon में गिर गया paint कर दी किसी ने masjid, so the mosque changed. So eventually found the mosque, showed people around, and at a local dhaba somebody told them that yes, this person was used to live here, but they moved to I think Chandigarh it was. So they the families in Chandigarh. So our wonderful field workers, Parsh and Sam, ended up in Chandigarh, right from Roopnagar in Punjab. They ended up in Chandigarh to find the family, and they didn't find the friend, but they found his wife, and connected the wife to Iqbaluddin like after 70 years. And she had heard of Iqbaluddin's family, and Iqbaluddin knew about his friend's family. So they kind of got in touch, and they were like, Iqbaluddin was like, "You must come to the UK and stay." And she was like, "No, I'm so old." So it was a very sweet WhatsApp conversation. So it's not just VR; it's also like finding these families and
And the
getting in touch.
interpersonal
And if
connection.
we, yeah, if we can find it, we will. Especially if we're already in the location, like we right now, as Sparsh and Sam are on fieldwork. So if anybody wants any Delhi connections in Pakistan, maybe let us know, and if we can search those out for you.
The advertising man in me is dying to make the reference. Umair, you remember 7 years ago, there was this one commercial called the
Yeah,
Google
Google.
Reunion. Yeah, 7 years ago.
Yep.
Immensely viral. I think it did some 15 million views in like 3 days or something like
Yeah.
that. And it was, I think, a reunion story of someone utilizing Google's products to find their long lost friend pre-partition, if I'm not mistaken. It reminds me of that, which actually brings me to the next interesting point that there have been so many people that have tried to champion the idea of the reunion, and there are large technology companies such as Google who are literally powering the world, right, without sugarcoating it. Do you guys get any kind of backing, resourcing, support from people who are already trying to champion this mission in some way, or uh, does it how does it kind of help your efforts?
Um, so we don't really have any tech support where there's something that we've kind of created on our own and we're doing. We do have a lot of support from like grant organizations and funds that we won. So Catchlight in America kind of gave us a big grant to make the VR film. The British Council and their um, what is it called, BFI fund. Um,
British British Council Arts. British Council Arts. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have Digital Innovation Fund, that's what it's called. So the British
Digital
Council gave us
collaboration. No,
yeah,
innovation.
Digital Collaboration Fund to work with Puffball in Pakistan to do the 2D animations. We also are supported by National Geographic, who are supporting one of our co-founders, Parsh, in this. So there's various organizations and grant bodies that we've kind of applied to and are now part of, who are also supporting the project, etc. So us tarah, not in the digital space, but in the arts and culture space, we've seen a lot of support for our project, and we ran also a Kickstarter campaign last year before the pandemic, before we knew anything like this would happen.
Exactly 1 year. It's been exactly 1 year
Yeah,
since it
and
ended.
yes, it's been
The 18th
exactly,
today.
and we got $28,000 donated by people across the globe who kind of loved what we
Lovely.
were doing and wanted to engage in the project and keep it going. So Ustra, we have a lot of support. Me and Jayo and all our team are all pro bono. None of us get paid, so whatever we kind of have gathered from the Kickstarter or from these funds goes directly into kind of producing the content
Lovely.
and finding these places.
I think you get
Oh,
paid
it's
in smiles
surprising.
and good wishes.
Yeah.
Yeah, smiles. But it's surprising. Yeah, I mean, जैसे तुमने बोला Google, Facebook. You're using Oculus. Oculus is now owned by Facebook, right? They are in the मतलब Facebook की mission statement में लिखा हुआ है कि we're in the business of connecting people. They should. I mean, they should have a bigger part to play in something like this, man. It's seriously, it can have
I mean
huge
it
ripples.
it's like It would be lovely if Facebook is like watching and they want to like help us or donate something or create. That would be wonderful. But it all depends. This is a very competitive space as well.
Yeah, of
So
course.
it may seem novel to you, but remember that there's so many other amazing projects and things going on right now. And who's going to support what? It's kind of potluck. Um, so hopefully maybe soon we'll have some other tech collaborations, but I think for now we're good. Like we feel pretty well supported by our current partners, and we've done very well with the way that we've been able to generate funds and resources for this project.
That's awesome. I'm actually dying to ask you guys, Jayosmita and Sadia, for both of you guys, have you actually had the opportunity to visit the other side of the border?
I haven't. I wanted to come once for a friend's wedding. I got the visa, but they wouldn't release my passport. So by the time I got my passport back, the visa had expired.
Oh
That's
my
my
God.
experience of trying to come to India. And I think right now it's going to be even harder for me to get a visa,
Yeah.
especially with the work I'm doing in my journalist profile. But Jayo, do you want to visit us? We would love to have you.
Yeah. मैं तो मतलब बैठी हूँ जाने के लिए. But no, so the thing is, I actually want to go. I haven't had the chance. I think we like the plan was to go and do the tracking in Bangladesh also, but then kindly the pandemic came and touched us, and the world shut down.
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
sure.
it's
No,
The,
but
not.
if you, Jay, if you were to come to Pakistan, like, is there a particular place that you've heard about, or you want to check out or explore? Do you want to go to like one of those villages, or do you want to see the cities, or do you want
So
to go up to the
I definitely
mountains?
want to go to Lahore because novelty factor. Like I have
Novelty?
been to
Fair enough.
no. I'll tell you what. So I have been to Delhi twice for like 2 days, and मैंने अब तक दिल्ली नहीं देखी है. Okay.
really?
Yeah, I have been to Delhi twice, and I've not seen Delhi. I've just like stayed indoors. And that being said, Delhi is supposed to be a lot like Lahore, at least
That's
photo
true.
wise.
That's true.
Yeah. Secondly, I definitely want to go to Karachi also because Karachi is supposed to be a lot like Bombay.
Again,
Well, that's
true.
a
Because it's
comparison generally made, but
huh?
Yeah, it's so Suveer can draw probably a Delhi and Lahore comparison because he's been to both, right? But
Yeah.
Suveer hasn't been to Karachi. No, Suveer, nahi na?
No, so
Sadly not.
this
No.
one time I was basically matlab, I was listening to one of the I don't know interviews or some podcast or something, and this person was like, "Huh, so Karachi does not have a lot of terraces or balconies. It's just like Bombay." I'm like, "Wow, is that how Bombay is categorized? Karachi is categorized. It doesn't have verandas and balconies."
We get to learn something new every single.
Yeah, huh? So, if you came to Karachi, and I'm sure, like, I'm from Karachi. I went and studied in Lahore, and then I know what Lahore is like and what Islamabad is like. The rest of the big cities in Pakistan, right? So, Karachi has this nervous energy, right? Like, for example, when I travel to Lahore, I don't see people in Lahore in मतलब उनका एक थोड़ा सा they're okay with life, like they're like मतलब मैं आज 6 बजे निकलता हूँ कंप्यूटर पे काम करते हैं जहाज में वहां पे जाके पहुंचता हूँ वहां पे 10-11 बजे पहुंचो तो हम मेरे जो वहां पे काउंटर पार्ट से बोलते हैं चलो जी अभी बैठो नाश्ता तो कर लो चलो भाई सो कराची में there's this nervous energy you know there's everybody's in this some sort of a hurry that they want to get something done pasina
Completely
chhut rahe
like
honge so
Bombay.
there's this yeah perhaps but
Completely like Bombay.
when we went to Bombay could be the grass is always greener on the other side. Bombay felt like a better version, like because in the time that I was in Bombay, like it was raining, drizzling, and then Suvir and his the entire bunch were such great hosts that उस वक्त मुझे वो सारी nervous energy नहीं नजर आती. I could see the expanse. So like a lot of things. कराची में जो 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 हम देखते हैं छोटी छोटी वो पुरानी विक्टोरियन टाइप बिल्डिंग्स होती हैं वो बॉम्बे में उनका स्केल 3-4x होता है सो it'll be interesting if you could I hope that you get a chance to actually visit Karachi and then Lahore as well and then compare notes with Delhi and Bombay and I hope it happens for real and we don't have to rely on something like Project Dastan to actually make it
Yeah.
happen although
Yeah.
that's a good placeholder for now but probably it's better when you
Yeah.
experience it
Right now,
yourself.
Project Dastan is doing the wish fulfillment bit.
Yeah, true.
Like,
It makes
yeah.
sense.
So actual visa will definitely be different. But right now the wish fulfillment is what is keeping us
Yeah.
going. I also definitely want to go to Bangladesh because
Yeah.
like that's where my family comes from. So yeah,
Got it. Bangladesh, I'm sure, will happen hopefully this year itself.
I hope,
Um,
yeah.
You know, one question that a lot of people ask us is, when we tell them we're doing this podcast, one question, the most popular question we get asked is, why are you guys doing this? What is your motivation to do it? Where do you guys get the idea from? Sadia, I know you have some co-founders. You've made a couple of references to them earlier in this hour. Where did you guys get the idea? You and your co-founders get the idea to do this. Why do you all do this? What's your motivation? What keeps you going?
So it started off as so Sparsh and a friend of his, Amina, were talking about their grandparents who kind of made the journey, one from India to Pakistan, one from Pakistan to India. And Sparsh's grandfather, his Nana, has been wanting to visit his hometown for decades and has never been able to. And the crazy idea came about, what if like it was kind of, I guess, a joke, यार virtually ले जाते हैं अगर can't physically take them, let's take them virtually. And then we were like, hey, I mean, so VR headsets exist, the technology exists, we can actually do this. So it just started off as this from just the desire, okay, I wish my grandparent could go see his village one last time. And we have this joke or whatever you want to call it, okay, Project Dastan should not exist. It exists because of these problems and these borders and the way that
Yeah.
politics exists. We should not have need to go through so much to just show a person their hometown. This is ridiculous that we have to have teams and technologies and these big grants to just make this one small journey between borders. Actually, some of these journeys are very, very small. So I think
883 kilometers small. That's the name of our
Yes.
podcast,
And,
right?
and yet it's an infinite distance, which is why you need tech to cover it.
yeah, I mean,
Can't be done physically.
it's absolutely amazing. Some of the distances, even just the fact, I have a friend in who, whenever he goes to Amritsar, texts me because in Amritsar he can catch FM 89. So he listens to Pakistani radio. And he messages
Whoa,
me, "Hey,
crazy.
I'm listening to FM 89," and like that's how close we are as countries. So it's absolutely makes no sense if you actually think about it. And so it came about as that. So Sparsh, me and Sam were together at Oxford University a few years ago, where we met, and we kind of talked about this. So initially we thought like we would do 10 partition take backs, and that would be it. But it kind of snowballed, and we got so much support and love, and we found people like Jayosmita. We found people like Aisha Amir, who's in Islamabad. We have Abu Sufyan in Delhi. There's such a big team of people who just love this idea and work with us with like there's no nobody gets it's not a stable salary or anything. They just work with us because they just feel this is such a nice cause. And I think it's in kind of a sea of capitalism and consumerism to find people and find a cause that people just want to engage in for no payoff. I think that's also wonderful, and I feel like a very interesting model for a social impact organization, kind of a new space that we found.
Is it the three of you as founders, yourself, Sparsh, and Sam?
Parsh, Ahuja, Saadia, me, and Sam are the co-founders, and then we have like a big team who've been supporting us over the years.
So you're obviously, you gave us your background. You're from Lahore, Pakistan. Sparsh, I would imagine, is India, but Sindhi. I'm guessing that's his
So
connection.
Parsh is actually Indian but lived in Australia all his life. So he's a non-resident Indian. And his family is actually migrated to Delhi. So his one of his grandparents is from somewhere in Attak in a small village called Bela. And
Oh,
his other grandparents were from, I think, Dera Diji
There
Khan,
Khan, I think.
Diji Khan
Diji
ki
Khan,
baat.
yeah.
Yeah, so they're from so those families. So he himself is very interested in this. Sam Dalrymple has lived in India all his life, although he's Scottish by origin. So he's lived in India all his life, who's seen the work of his father, William Dalrymple, of course, and has been very interested in the space. And he's a Sanskrit scholar. So it's really good to have him on the team, because he's kind of like the got the research chops on the team. So he was also very interested in this idea, and this space, and especially the conversations that we can have about colonialism and partition. And my family never migrated, but like I feel like as a Pakistani and as a Lahori, like my family saw what happened. My grandfather lost a lot of his Hindu friends. My nani saw the refugee camps that were opened in FC College in Lahore. So it's like it's there in the background. I think if you're Pakistani, like you spoke to me about Mahajir communities, like the fact that you're both Sindhi. I think especially if you're Pakistan, it's like partition impacted every single one of us.
That's absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely true. I have one last question, Jayasmita. I'm sure you've definitely piqued Umair and my interest as far as this virtual experience is concerned, and specifically also because we're from the industry, right? When it comes to virtual reality and augmented reality, it's what we do for a living. We design experiences, albeit for brands, but of course, using technologies such as that, those that you're championing. And I'm sure you've piqued the interest of a lot of our listeners right now. If they want to voyeuristically view some of these experiences, can they? If yes, how can they?
So definitely a few video clips like interview के एक minute का clippings are definitely on our website. We occasionally put up the entire experience in like a, I don't know, 8 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever video bit on our Instagram page. I think a lot of our videos are also on Vimeo. So the Project Dastaan page of Vimeo, that's there too. So like
But are
considering
any
the
of these in VR? Like, do you have something on YouTube VR or something?
Yes, so they're on Vimeo, on VR, and also
Oh,
on our website. So you can
yeah.
take a 360 ride of Gomti River in Lucknow, and
whoa,
it's on our website.
That's awesome. And for our
that's cool.
listeners, that's www.projectdastan.org, dastaan.org. You can find them on Instagram at project.dastan. That's Dastaan. Am I right? All right.
Yeah, I have one last question, Suvir. I'm just again, once again, it's the geek in me, and I'm not sure who amongst your team, Sadia, looks after the tech, but like, oh, I understand that Sadia, you have a background in explaining stories and concepts through visuals, whether it's cartoons or whether it's through an immersive video experience. What we're You're on a podcast right now, right? We can see each other, but this is primarily going to be going ahead on audio. And it seems like video is definitely richer and deeper and a much more rewarding experience, but it's much more resource heavy. It takes a bunch of really nice organizations who support you so that you can create that rich content. How do you feel about immersive audio experiences? Do you think that could be something that could be used to conjure up images in one's head rather than specifically physically show them? Like for example, अक्सर ही हम record कर रहे हो तो कोई ना कोई background noise आती है अभी भी. If I'm sure when this being edited, so सुवीर जो मैंने बोला था ना कि एक बंदा है जो सीटी बजाता हुआ यहाँ से जाता है,
Ah,
उसकी आज आवाज आई थी. So ऐसे ही कोई होगा, कोई फॉर एग्जाम्पल, मतलब 50 साल बाद भी अगर मैं सुनूंगा ना टीन डब्बे वाले, I'll immediately be transformed and I'll be able to see and visualize that ready wala that's collecting that recycling stuff, because sounds also hit us at a certain level. So do you think that that could be one route also, or do you think video is perhaps the route that one should go for, because it connects much more easily?
Um, I think that obviously we're using video because it can just as I spoke के जो visual होता है वो उसके impact इतना instant होता है that you instantly understand what's going on. But also we are aware that we are working in a space where we're working with people who are very old. And when we were starting out this project, we did some research. So a lot of time VR has been used for therapeutic purposes, right? For people who are constrained to a wheelchair or have mobility issues. VR is being used right now to give them an experience of the outside, because that's therapeutic. So I do understand the point you're making. Case sound jo hai, for example, if you cannot see, if you're visually impaired, sound is very, very important for you to pick up cues, etc. So I think that is absolutely very important. So we are trying to, so Sparsh is our main person who's looking after the tech to make sure the sound is there, for not only the 360, but also when we're working on a Child of Empire, which is the full VR animated 3D experience. The sound is very important. अगर आप गुल्ली डंडा खेल रहे हो गली में VR में, तो जो पॉप
Yeah.
है जो आपने मारना है, वो पॉप की साउंड क्या है, राइट? सो आई डू फील दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड इवन सो आर 2D एनिमेशंस, वन ऑफ आवर मेजर कंसर्न्स इज साउंड. कि उसमें अगर खाना पक रहा है एक किचन में तमिलनाडु में, तो वो साउंड्स क्या हैं, दे हैव टू बी वेरी रियलिस्टिक. अगर एक एक्सेंट है, कोई बूढ़ी औरत बोल रही है, तो वो अगर बंगाली एक्सेंट है, तो वो एक्सेंट क्या है. सो आई एब्सोल्युटली एग्री दैट we generally delegate sound, but in our project we've realized like how important the sounds are. And you've seen like the ASMR videos all over the
हाँ
internet, and how
भाई अभी
satisfying
या
those
या
are.
अब मैं अभी करंट एग्जांपल आपको देता हूँ ना. सो बिकॉज ऑफ द लॉकडाउन एंड थैंक्स टू द पाकिस्तानी पासपोर्ट, सो नाउ इफ आई रैंडमली लाइक किसी के फोन पे एमिरेट्स का इन फ्लाइट म्यूजिक लगा हुआ था, उसने रिंगटोन डाली थी, and it just made me giddy just hearing it. I didn't even know why. It's like a knee-jerk reaction, like, whoa, that feels so good. Wait, why am I feeling so good? So a sound does have that sort of some sounds may have that impact on our psyche, may have some therapeutic value, which can probably be better explored. And since VR is that sort of technology that
Yeah, I
takes you
mean,
on.
if you just look at music, for example, so one of our partition take backs, Khalid Bashir Rai ka take back था जो, जिसमें स्पर्श put the soundtrack, एक पुराना गाना है, सामने सामने गली में मेरा घर है, भूलना ना, इस तरह का गाना है, बहुत पुराना.
Mhm.
And when this man was wearing the glasses and the sound came on, he was also singing along.
Wow.
He was looking at his old village and he's singing. I mean, in just that sense, कि वो हमने pick up नहीं किया उसके, कि what a beautiful experience कि वो साथ साथ गा भी
Yeah.
रहे हैं और अपना सिर भी हिला रहे हैं जब वो अपना बाहर देख रहे हैं. So it's I absolutely agree with you कि sound बहुत जरूरी है, and I feel that we kind of discount it, but like try to go on a long walk without your headphones on, and see how longer the walk feels.
True. True.
On that note, of taking long walks, 883 kilometers long, Saadia, Jayosmita, it's been an absolute pleasure to have the both of you on our podcast. And thank you so much for sharing these joyous stories of the joyous work that you guys are doing and bringing smiles to so many faces. I'm sure on both sides of the border. And we definitely look forward to the films that you're releasing. We definitely look forward to hearing the stories of women in partition, and we're both very excited. I'm sure we're going to try and find some of the VR content as soon as we log off from this
Yeah.
podcast. I think
Ah, yeah.
you've really piqued both our interest, and congratulations for all the lovely work that you're doing. And we wish you the very, very best in the years to come.